Hello friends, it's your girl Alina back for another video, and in this one we'll be diving into the 5 things you need to know all around this upcoming full moon in the sign of Leo. In this video we'll talk about how this lunation is offering us a cosmic spotlight illuminating how we can best balance the duality between the personal and the impersonal. We'll talk top transits that can be very conducive for getting our relationships and even finances in order. Oh, and of course at the end I'll offer some custom full moon journal prompts so we can journal together and align with this energy. But with that said, let's dive in. First up, what makes this full moon special? So as with all full moons, they're seen as a cosmic spotlight, as they can oftentimes illuminate what has and hasn't been working for us midway through the lunar cycle. Full moons are also seen to raise the tides, and just as they do raise the tides, they can often raise our inner world, our emotions, and our intuitive abilities. I just find it so interesting that we see in tarot and so much occult and spiritual symbolism that water represents our emotions, and we physically see that the moon controls the tides just as they also control our emotional and intuitive states. All of that to say, this is another reason why we see people doing full moon rituals, where they sit down and write out what has and hasn't been working for them midway through this lunar cycle, especially relative to any intentions that you might have set at the beginning of this lunar cycle at the new moon. And they set intentions to release anything that might not be serving them anymore. And from a seasonal perspective, here in the Northern Hemisphere, this Leo full moon is also considered to be the snow moon, or the eagle moon, as referred to by many Native American communities. Snow moon and eagle moon is often the name given to the first full moon of the month of February, and relative to aligning with nature, the snow moon is an indicator that we are seeing usually the worst or the peak of the winter season, so the peak of snow, cold, and cloudy days. It can actually be an encouraging marker and reminder that the best is yet to come. And it's actually been cool because personally, I've noticed that the sun is finally setting later in the evening, and it's been nice to see that progression of the sun's path. Now, when we specifically see a full moon in the sign of Leo, this Leo energy can be heightened, and you may feel a stronger urge to maybe express yourself and your individuality. Leo full moons have always been a supportive time for all aspects of display. So this can be a good time to maybe tap into your creativity or maybe let your unique talents take center stage. Now, Leo is also associated with leadership, romance, and self-expression, which means that this full moon can be a very optimal time for focusing on how you can bring more intention into the path that you're on in life and how you can center your needs first. That way you can properly help others second. And this is because Leo is a fire sign, which is associated with passion, enthusiasm, and creativity. It's also ruled by the sun, which is our central star, and is the planet of the self and vitality. All right, next up, for anyone looking for a forecast relative to romance and finances around the time of this full moon, the Venus square Mars transit could be a challenging one depending on how you approach it. Now, this transit can sometimes bring a bit of tension and even conflict in relationships and financial matters. Now, this is because we see Venus, the planet of love and relationships, having a sort of difficult square aspect with Mars, the planet of action, ego, and assertiveness. Now, during a Venus square Mars transit, you may experience heightened callings for boldness or being impulsive in your relationships and financial dealings. Now, while for some, this can bring potential excitement and drive and sort of help you to rise above challenges or resistance, this can often be a difficult aspect for most, as it can often rev up our ego sensitivities and insecurities relative to matters of the heart and our material possessions. So looking at this from a more constructive perspective, we can see that the full moon will be illuminating areas of our lives that are not always working. So overall, around the time of this full moon, it'll be helpful to be mindful of how your ego might be contributing to any roadblocks within the realms of love, material possessions, and finances. Next up, for anyone looking for any sort of spiritual inspiration or guidance, we see that Mercury will actually be sextiling Neptune at the time of this full moon. Now, this type of transit tends to offer us more easy flowing energy in terms of our intuition and imagination. It's also been seen to bring a pretty strong connection relative to our spiritual realm. Now, that's because we see Mercury, the planet of communication and learning, having a very easy flowing transit with Neptune, the planet of intuition, imagination, and spirituality. And they're having this sextile, which can usually indicate easy flowing opportunities and luck within the realms of our lives that these planets impact. Now, this transit can bring heightened intuition and inspiration, making it a pretty good time to tap into your creativity and spiritual practices, especially if you've been kind of looking to kind of reignite that flame within. Next up, we see that both the moon and sun will be squaring Uranus. Now, the sun squaring Uranus can sometimes bring unexpected events and change, while the moon squaring Uranus can bring a sense of emotional restlessness. So, overall, getting clear on your support systems and being mindful not to take things too personally, along with exploring what adaptability might look like for you during this time, can be very helpful if you're already noticing any sort of shifts in your life. By the way, if this video has been resonating with you so far, don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button, as it supports the channel and I make videos like these every single month. Okay, next up, let's talk about ways to align with this energy. I just want to remind y'all of the power of taking what resonates and leaving the rest, as all transits land in different areas of our charts and can show up more noticeably than others. So first up is self-expression. Take advantage of the heightened energy of self-expression and creativity that the full moon might be calling out of you. Engage in activities that might allow you to tap into your talents and let your unique voice be heard. Another idea is to be open to change. The sun and moon squaring Uranus transit can often bring unexpected changes. So if we can embrace being adaptable and be open to different opportunities that are unexpected, especially with Uranus bringing in a lot of change, that can be helpful. And one more, this full moon can be a powerful time for holding space for your imagination and your intuition. Because again, we see this Neptune-Mercury transit that's really supporting our imagination, tapping into our inner dialogue and our intuitive connections with the world and the people around us. All right, next up, let's dive into collective perspective. So for any of y'all who are new here, collective perspective is a new section that I've added to my full and new moon readings, where we look at the transits relative to the collective perspective of it all. As we see with many people in advanced spiritual practices outside of New Age or Western perspective of spirituality, they often always focused on how they could uplift their community, how they could utilize the enlightenment and deeper levels of self-understanding with themselves and bring that to their community and better the spaces around them for everyone and not just themselves. So with this Leo energy being heightened during this full moon, activities that can promote individuality and self-expression can particularly resonate with the world. So this could include creating a space for marginalized voices or promoting self-expression for even children. So two examples of this that come to mind can be women's resource centers. So women's resource centers often focus on promoting self-expression and individuality, specifically in women who need extra support. Now, many of these centers offer programs and services such as art therapy, writing workshops, and self-expression classes. You can find centers like these in your community by checking out sites like Volunteer Match or the YMCA, which offer programs and services specifically for women, including housing, counseling, and job training. I'll provide links in the video description for all of them. Another example could be working with social justice organizations. Now, while there has been negative connotations created, keyword created, around the phrase social justice, many social justice organizations focus on creating spaces for marginalized voices to be heard by providing platforms for self-expression and individuality. Now, you can find local organizations in your area through places like the NAACP, the ACLU, and Amnesty International. Again, I'll provide links for all of these places in the video description. All right, finally, let's dive into these Leo full moon journal prompts. Now, what I'll do is I will read out the prompts and I will also be sharing them in text in the video description. If you have your Auralign astrology planner, go ahead and open it and flip over to the dedicated full moon ritual page where you can journal out all of these. I'm so glad that we can do this together now. By the way, there's actually a sale going on for planners. So if you're a month into the year, maybe you didn't get a planner, or maybe you did and you're like, I want something that's more intentional, maybe something that's more inspiring, be sure to check out the Auralign Astrology planners, which are my creation and are linked in the video description. With that said, let's dive into these prompts. What are some practices that have helped you become more in tune with your intuition and imagination? What are some that you'd like to try? When was the last time that you noticed your ego was creating a distorted view of a situation? What have you learned from this experience? What are things that you enjoy sharing with others? This could be information, talent, resources, support, or even something that you did. What does it look like for you to strike a balance between your personal needs and the needs of the collective? And finally, is there anything you're ready to release during this full moon? This can look like limiting beliefs, habits, patterns, people, or environments that might no longer be serving you. All right, y'all, I'm going to go ahead and answer one or two of the writing prompts to sort of catch you up with my life and to maybe spark some conversation. So in terms of things that I like sharing with others, I like sharing everything. I love sharing specifically information. That's why I created this channel, because I love learning things that I'm like, oh my gosh, more people need to know about this. And being able to sit here and say, let me tell you about it. Did you hear about this? Let me send you a link. Like, I'm that person, and I feel very energized by sharing things, but also learning from others. And one of the reasons why I asked y'all this is because I feel like sometimes there can be a negative connotation around Leos, and that they're always self-centered and they always want to be the center of attention. And while astrologically, the ruling planet or the ruling astro body is the sun, which is literally what the world revolves around, which I find very funny. I don't know, I think it kind of brings up a conversation around this sort of negative connotation with being outgoing or wanting to sometimes have a platform. Maybe not always, but wanting to share things with people and what connects us to our community. And I say that because I feel like, especially in like Western society, we've kind of normalized isolation, and there's not enough conversation around the impact psychologically, emotionally, mentally of community. And that when there are people who are outgoing or people who are expressive, oftentimes that's because they're the ones who thrive the most in community. Because when we are in community, that is when we collaborate and we share and we learn from one another and we exchange information. Now, I will say, I am a Gemini, Sun, Moon, and Mercury, so I'm a little biased. I love information exchange within that space. By the way, I'm ranting now. Like, this is just like a stream of consciousness, so if you want more of a structured conversation, that's kind of the end of it for the video relative to the full new moon. But I just want to connect with y'all about this. But I feel like we kind of look at astrological signs in isolation when in actuality they're puzzle pieces, and when we can look at them as a part of the whole, as relative to like how we connect with one another, and how Leos can be a puzzle piece in the grander scheme of community and leadership, I think it can be a lot more constructive. And one last thing, I was actually interviewed by a journalist by the name of Jonece Starr, who runs Reckon News, and it was for a newsletter talking about astrology, finding balance, and also my personal perspectives around mantras and affirmations and yoga relative to Western versus Eastern perspective of it being very isolated versus looking at it relative to the synergistic nature of yoga and of our lifestyle, and how when we embrace the holistic and Eastern perspective of meditation, yoga, affirmations, and mantras, it can actually be a lot more approachable, especially for anybody who finds it a little hard to kind of fully isolate your mind in meditation. So if that's something that interests you, then click the link in the description, because I had a great interview with her and she was super nice, and I think that Reckon News is a great platform, so be sure to check it out. But with all of that said, if you made it to the end of this video, then be sure to comment 3 sun emojis, because this is a Leo, sun-ruled Leo fire sign, full moon. Or comment whether or not any of the journal prompts or what I talked about for this lunation resonated with you or has already been coming up. I love hearing about stuff like that. But with that said, I will end this with my favorite quote, and that is, Be gentle with yourself, because life is about the journey, not the destination. All right. Peace, friends.